pretend. I'm really gross about how much I love that movie. I will sit in the audience and be the loudest person, like, "Woo! Smith's done it again!" So it is. It's coming out. You'll be able to see it in your homes. You don't even have to go out. My suggestion to you is like $10. Get 50 people together in your house, or 20, or whatever. How many people you can fit in your house, and watch it with a bunch of people, and then go home and watch it again by yourselves. You don't have to do that, but they would like me to say that. But I'm telling you, get a bunch of people together in one room, watch it. It's a lot of fun with a crowd and stuff. So that's coming. September 1st, you can see it there, and then I think there was a DVD update up there. It was October 19th. So that's Red State for now. But I like watching it. I just sat in the back. I'm sorry? We will bring it to Vegas. We won't bring it there. No, yes, of course. Of course. I really want to bring... Red State is a movie about homophobia and how fucking stupid it is, so I definitely want to bring it to San Francisco. I want to play this movie at the Castro. It would be amazing. So anyway, there it is, Red State. That's what we've been doing all year. We're going to have a shit ton of fun with it. Check it out when you fucking can. It's way fucking different. Don't look for Jay and Silent Bob in it at all, man. This ain't a comedy like Clerks, a horror movie like Jersey Girl. So, how are you, sir? Let's turn it back to you. We only got 45 minutes left in this, the most wonderful hour and a half of my whole year.
I just wanted to say thank you, and you're the best thing for storytelling since the pen and paper, so thank you.
You're so sweet. Thank you, sir. I appreciate that, man. Hey!
Hey, how are you?
Excellent.
I've had this question since I saw you at Produced By Conference back in June.
Okay.
Yes, and I wanted to ask, people say that you should...
Don't do it with that fucking Hellboy fist, though. It's coming off too aggro. If you got the fist on, I'm like, anything you want, buddy. No, seriously, take that fist off. Okay. Soon one, you're like, this is the question I've had since Produced By. Can you duck? Go ahead, sir.
People say that you should, or filmmakers have constantly told me that you should build your career and then decide to get married and raise a family. But like I've noticed, for your career, you've been able to manage both at the same time, and I wanted to ask, how have you been able to handle maintaining a marriage and raising your daughter and your family while building your career and succeeding in the movies you make?
Or not succeeding. That's always the worst part, where you've given up time with your family and then the movie doesn't cure cancer, which none of mine ever have. Try as I might. I don't do the work, man. I have a huge support team and stuff. The only work I do is what you see there and coming out here with a mic and stuff. The real author of our kid, hands down, has been Jennifer from day one. She built her and she programmed her and built her to be like a smart baby woman, It's kind of neat and stuff. And only now has the kid started to kind of recognize and acknowledge, like, oh, I have a father as well, because I can do shit like we do that Smodcast Internet radio show. And this week, before we came to Comic-Con, we had a bunch of the kids from Teen Wolf, the MTV show Teen Wolf, over to the house, and they were on the program. And my kid's a huge Teen Wolf fanatic and whatnot. So to be able to bring those kids to the house, with that's where our little radio station is, up in the living room and stuff. And the kids were real sweet about not being creeped out. We're like, come into our living room, sit down. So you're on Teen Wolf, eh? But it was a cool thing for her, and probably an even cooler thing for me. She was screaming. I've never seen the kid scream, literally one of those girls at the Twilight panel, just like screeching, jumping up and down with her friends, nonsensical kind of shit and whatnot. And her friend was Jason Mewes, so it was. He's a big fan. He's the one that got her into it. He's like, "You watch Teen Wolf," and she's like, "You watch Teen Wolf?" He's like, "Every week." So having them to the house was kind of neat. It reminded me of, I grew up watching the Brady Bunch and shit like that. I remember seeing the episode where Davy Jones came to the Brady Bunch's house, and I was just only in TV to shit like that happen. And then 30 years later or something like that, I was able to give my kid a kind of Davy Jones moment. So much so that I was like, Teen Wolf kids, sing girl, look what you've done to me. And they didn't know what the fuck I was talking about. So, but it was cool. That thing is kind of neat. And that's what I could add to the relationship, or what I can add to the family, or the matrix of what Harley is. I find my role now is more useful in as much as she's starting to discover her voice as an artist. She started writing, which fucking does my heart so good. And she's very much like me. Harley is, she looks like a girl version of me without the beard. She's a tween, so she's developing, but my tits are still way bigger. We race, we measure. But she's starting to come in her own. She's starting to feel things, write things that I identify with in a big, weird way. Mannerisms and patterns that I detect from my own youth and shit like that. And you never want to jump in there and try to steer her. She's got to make her own choices and whatnot. But I can be helpful when it comes to the writing stuff. My kid is insanely empathetic, and so was I to some degree, and still am. I had to deaden it because when you're in the arts, you're open for criticism, that kind of thing. You know, that's why I always bristle against criticism, because it's like, I like my kid. My kid's super empathetic, right? Like, my kid feels for everything. Bugs, animals, fucking people. You know, even I told her finally about Hitler once. I was like, this is the worst human that ever lived. And after I told her the story, she's like, is he okay now? And I'm like, what, are you fucking dumb? You should be cheering for this monster's death. But, you know, she just feels for people. She's a real human being. She's a humanist, my kid, and that makes me so fucking happy. So, you know, some shit bothers her that don't necessarily bother other people and whatnot, kind of roll off most other people, hit her hard, and I recognize that from my own youth. So now I can step in and tell her shit where I'm like, I'm not telling you what to do, but you feel this way because of this, blah, 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 and it happens, and so maybe if you channel it into this, like my big thing is just like all this shit you feel, whenever you get emotional about something, you just sit down and start writing, because you're 12 now, you do that for 5, 10 years, by the time you're in your 20s, you'll be fucking unstoppable, man, because people will value you in this life if you could feel or think something for them they can't feel or think or express for themselves. That's the only reason I get to do what I do, because I say things periodically, not all the time, but periodically that people go, that's the way I feel, man. And so, boom, suddenly they're willing to support me because they identify with me. And I always tell my kid, feel everything. Just be insanely empathetic. Don't deaden yourself. Don't get caught by the whys and shit. You know, it's like you send girls to schools with boys and girls and shit like that. They say girls tend not to raise their hands as much because they don't want to be thought of as smarter than the fucking boys and shit. And, you know, we send our kids to an all-girls school for that reason. And I'm like, take that into life. Don't let anybody fucking talk you out of doing something cool. Like, follow it through. You know, I keep trying to tell her, I'm like, look, you're young, man. You live at home with your parents. You'll be living with us for a few more years. Chase whimsies and shit. Chase passion, like Dad. Just don't smoke weed to do it. But do, you know, it in your own way. Because Dad sits upstairs and chases whimsies like, let's do it, you know, boom. And it's effective for me. You know, I only started smoking weed at age 38 and shit. And I want to remind every kid in the audience, don't smoke weed until you're 38, then smoke a lot. It's really effective then. First you got to go out and build a life, and then smoke it the fuck away. But, you know, if you have a life and you're constantly working, people won't bug you about smoking weed. If you're just smoking weed watching fucking South Park, you'll catch some shit. But if you're smoking weed and you're like, hey man, I just recorded a podcast, or I just wrote a book, or I just did this, or I'm writing this thing, or I'm going out on stage and doing this, or I'm performing this, people won't give you shit, man, because they're like, oh, well, he smokes a lot, but at least he's productive. Whereas I say pop-ductive. So I try to tell my kid, like, you know, without the weed, she'll figure that out for herself at one point. But I try to tell her, like, chase the whimsies, man. Go after shit that don't let people talk you out of it. Like, that's stupid, don't do it. Like, okay, that's great. You guys think it's stupid, don't do it. I'm going to go over here and work it, and if it works, I'm going to look like a fucking genius. So keep naysaying and poo-pooing over there. So that's where I become effective for the kid, where I'm like, all right, these are the things that kind of help you out in your art, in your expressing yourself, because that's going to be your superpower. That's what's going to make you matter most to people in the world. Just being able to say something maybe they can't for themselves in that moment. Maybe stepping out there and providing an example. It's like, oh shit, if she's saying it, I can fucking say it for myself. That's what I've been doing for the last 20 years, man. I don't come up here and be like, nobody can do what I do. I try to come up here every year and remind you, look at me, I'm fucking retarded. But I have a career, you know, and you could have one too. And it's all about that. It helps with that kind of thing. So I haven't been insanely useful bringing up Harley until recently. And that's one of the reasons why I think it's easy for me to step away from filmmaking too. I love my movies, don't get me wrong. I love my art like I love my child, but I wasted years sitting on a movie set while my kid was growing up, and I miss shit. You know, I didn't see things happen. And now every time I hear that Harry Carpenter song, whatever Harry Chapin song, Cats in the Cradle, I start rolling a tear, man. I used to fucking listen to it and be like, yeah, that's how my dad must have felt. And now I'm like, that's how I feel, you know. So you start looking at that and you're like, wow, I've given up a lot of time to my art, and meanwhile there's a little human being in my house that is part me and is going to go on a huge grand adventure that your adventure is meant to pay for. Like my whole life, everything we do in life is meant for the kid. So it's just like, stop focusing so much on the work and worrying about the next project and setting up the next fucking movie. And, you know, instead, let it happen as it happens, spend a lot more time with the kid. And again, like, I got lucky. I didn't have one of those jobs like my father where I couldn't spend a shit ton of time with my kid. I did. I spent an inordinate amount of time with Harley growing up, but it was never enough. When you look back on it, you got a human being in your midst, this little person and shit, interesting and whatnot, say stupid fucking things. You can get them to curse, you know. And suddenly you're off on some fucking movie set going, put your hand down your pants and say snookins, you know. So for me, I'd rather, I can't even take credit. The balance came from Jennifer. And Jennifer gave up an entire life of her own to kind of do that, to raise Harley. That became her importance, her mission in life. And I remember at one point getting into a fight with her about, like, you know, well, I fucking make the money around here, or some stupid fucking male bullshit like that. And she looked at me sadly, not in this angry, like, fuck you way. That came later when I was like, can we fuck? She's like, no, you remember that comment? Fuck you. But she looked at me sadly as if to say, oh, Kevin, do you really think your movies are as important as this kid? And they're not. You know, ultimately, I love that people love them, and I loved making them, but I got a little human being at home. I got 5 more years with her before she heads off to start her own adventure and shit like that. So I'd much rather spend more time close to home with her as well. And now family is a lot more important to me. And not that it ever wasn't, but now I kind of see the importance and see my role in it. Never really saw, I always thought my role was like, well, I'm the breadwinner, that's what I do, I go earn. But now my role is something kind of different. I can actually help, I can actually add insight. I'm way more interested in doing that than kind of making movies. But I guess the moral of the story is fuck Jen Schwalbach, it'll work out great. I've been doing this for fucking years, and still there's that moment where I'm like, oh, what if I suck? What if nobody's there? You know, what if I forget? What if I run out of things to say? Not the last one, but you know. Anyway.
First, I'd just like to say, God damn, Red Staples.
It's, you know what, dude, I wouldn't, you're not supposed to, thank you, you're not supposed to, like, pump your own shit, it's gauche and shit. I'm supposed to be like, oh, it's worth seeing. It's fucking dope. It's so fucking good. I would sit there and watch that movie night after night and be like, who the fuck made this? I did. Pat myself on the back. It's a lot of fun for me to watch, and that's saying something. When you're a filmmaker, man, you live, especially a filmmaker like me, when you're writing shit too, you live with it from the moment it's an idea all the way to when it's finished and whatnot, when it's fully realized. And by the time it gets to theaters, you're just sick of it. You don't want to watch it anymore. You've seen it 6 ways to Sunday. I also cut the movies as well, so I'm writing, directing, cutting, so I'm in there with every frame of footage. By the time it goes out in the theaters, I'm like, I don't want to watch it anymore. But when we took the Red State flick out on the tour, on the Red State USA tour, every night, I thought I'd sit in the bus and just smoke weed while the movie was playing, go out and do the Q&A afterwards. But when we got to the first stop, I was just like, you know what, man, I'm going to watch the movie. It's kind of cool. It's Radio City Musical. What are the chances this will happen again? So I'm going to sit in the back and watch the flick and tweet while it's going on. And it was so gratifying, man. And finally, I would stop tweeting and just fucking watch the movie. There's one stretch that I absolutely love, and I get to see my wife. She's in the movie, Jennifer, and she carries a fucking gun as well. And I get to see her firing fucking automatic weaponry over this giant cross at the government. And I'm like, that's hot, you know? It's kind of fucking neat. It's cool for me, a personal victory of sorts, because as much as I love my wife, she's, you know, she's a dominant force in our household and whatnot, and kind of her word is law and whatnot. And her father-in-law, Byron, is